Hello and welcome back, and we are going to be talking about taxes. Yeah, not a really exciting topic, I know, but in this case, many people want to know, if I homeschool, can I get a tax break? So we're going to be talking about that in this video. The first part of this video, we'll be looking at the federal government. Do they offer anything for homeschool parents in the way of tax breaks? And of course, we'll have to look at the states and how the states will factor that in. That will be the second part. Third, we're going to be looking at the opposition. Why would anybody be opposed to giving homeschool families tax breaks? Fourth, we're going to be looking at financial alternatives, right? Besides getting tax breaks, what other ways that homeschooling, you can get some financial benefits from that. And last, we're going to be looking at some data and information about that. So at the federal level, there's like no direct correlation between being able to write off the expenses you are spending on homeschooling as a direct educational write-off. Obviously, in any of these situations, you'd want to be talking to tax attorneys or tax accountants, because they're going to know lots of different ways that you can do this. There are sometimes, though, ways that you can do business expense write-offs, and if you are talking about this as being your business, particularly if you help to educate some other families, right, you can then write off the use of your home and materials and supplies and other that as part of homeschooling expenses, because it's part of your business. Also, there are some write-offs that you can have as a teacher. So now this is usually public school teachers. So if you aren't licensed as a teacher, you might not be able to do this. And again, this is where you got to talk to tax accountants and attorneys. But there's really no direct correlation between, you're homeschooling, you get to write off this kind of expenses. None of that at that federal level. Now, states are a little bit different because states have their own rules around their own state taxes and all. And there are actually some states that do give you tax breaks that you can write off the expenses that you are incurring for educating a child at home, and but most of them are very similar to federal rules. So, as always, I got to say, you got to talk to your accountant and your attorney and check those rules out, those laws. But you might also want to think about how can you make this a business where you can then write those things off because you're running a business. So those are things for you to begin to think about in terms of both federal and state regarding taxes. Why is this? What's the opposition? First, politics obviously play in, and both at the state and federal level, teacher unions are very powerful. They have a very strong voice, and public education is thought of as, well, we've had a long history of public education in this country, a very good one, all right? We have been, up until recently, one of the best educated countries in the world. So there's a long history that's kind of gotten into the whole culture and all this, and they want to protect that. So the fear is that if we give money to families that pull out of public school setting, then we're taking money out of that system that's beneficial for a lot of people, and they're already hurting for money. This is the way the argument goes. Now, whether you buy into that argument or not, that's something that you need to be conscious and thinking about. Because if you want homeschooling for your child and others to thrive, there's some things that you need to be aware of from a political front, because one of the challenges is that financial piece, right? Is somebody being there with their child means if you're there, you can't be working somewhere else, or even if you're trying to work from home, you've got to be able to work from home while your child is going through their schooling, right? So it's a valid concern on how you're going to be able to do that and afford that. So we've got to understand the opposition to it so you can develop those counter arguments for that. And this is one reason why the voucher system has been kind of gaining ground. As more people begin to homeschool, they begin to argue that we should be able to access the money for our homeschool as well as somebody who wants to send it to a private school. So the concern has been politically about public schools and that money being drained out, or that somehow you would be subsidizing wealthy people. All right, so that's kind of where the argument, the opposition plays in. All right, I began to allude a little bit about the alternatives to just getting tax breaks, such as the idea of voucher programs. Now, voucher programs are gaining momentum, and some rural communities actually that don't have like a public high school, whatever, they send their kids to another district, and the families get to choose which district they go to. And some states have been different court cases about whether families can use that money to send them to a private school. Well, it's the same argument going, can we use that money so I can stay home and homeschool my child? So for example, if a town in Maine, where I'm from, doesn't have a high school, and they get to send their child to a neighboring town of their choice, the per student tuition, let's say, is $7,000. They would get that they could then use to help subsidize going to a private school. If they were allowed to do it for a homeschool and you had 3 kids, now all of a sudden you're getting $21,000 coming to you through this kind of arrangement. Now again, all the states are different. Many of them might allow that for private schools, but not for homeschooling. So you need to check those things out and become vocal on that. Homeschool associations can help share that load and the financial burdens aspect that comes from this. You could potentially find grants or scholarships even for homeschooling, all right? There are so many different organizations out there who would want to support the education of children that it's possible to find some of these grants. So there's other ways to begin to seek it, but hey, bottom line is it does take a little bit of work on your part to try to investigate those and find those things. And the more willing you are to do that, the more likely you might find some other sources. It does come back to your mindset, right? Your ability to think outside the box and be determined to find different avenues to do this. So, as always, right, I come right back about this whole mindset thing. And in this case, not just with your students, but for you as well, to find those alternative sources and creative ways to make this work. If you're fortunate enough to live in a state that offers some direct tax savings, like Minnesota is one of these, and you accumulate, so you say, oh, I spent $2,000 on this curriculum material and another $500 on this supplies. We did field trip opportunities, and that cost us another $1,000. Whatever it is that you've been spending out, and you itemize those, you're going to get to be able to deduct some of those on your tax reforms. So if you spend, and please don't quote me on the numbers because I don't know the specific numbers for the state of Minnesota, but you'll get the idea here, right? So if you spend $5,000 and you're able to write that off, that might save you $500, $800, whatever the case may be on where you live in taxes, right? So you really didn't spend $5,000, you'd spent $4,200 because you're going to get some money back, or you're not going to have to spend as much on taxes. So that's essentially how it works, but you've got to look at your state and find all those loopholes. Again, trying to figure out, by calling this a business, this is part of your job, you might be able to get more write-offs even at the federal level. So seek those answers out and take advantage of it, right? Once again, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel. Check out our other videos. One of them that you might be particularly interested in is, do colleges care if you're homeschooled? So we have that. We have similar videos along those lines. Also can find my podcast there where I talk to people from all kinds of different walks of life. So check all that out today, and I'll see you in the next video.